So when I was in first grade, I learned a really valuable lesson. I had this gym teacher, and I don't remember his name. I remember he was really tall, and the way he carried himself, he had this really upright, very proud posture. And I'm guessing he was probably ex-military. And he had this big, booming voice, and he intimidated the crap out of me. And we had this unit on rope climbing. And I remember some of those kids would just walk right up to that rope, grab a hold of it, shimmy right up, and it was nothing. Like they would just do it over and over again. And then there were some that wouldn't really try it, or they would half-heart it and, would give up before they really put much effort in. But I was convinced I was going to climb this rope. And I gave it everything. I got blisters on my little hands. I tried wrapping the rope around my foot. I watched how the kids did it. I tried so many things, and I made it in that first time in the unit about 3/4 of the way up. And I was really discouraged because I was like, oh, I'm going to get this. And then it didn't happen. And at the end of the unit, my gym teacher called me over, and I was like, oh man, I'm getting in trouble. And I didn't even know I had done wrong, but I knew I was getting in trouble. And he pulls me over and he squats down at my level and looks me in the eye and he says, Caroline, what I really appreciate you is that you have persistence and you're consistent. And I had no idea what those words meant. And he continued on. He said, I watched you, and a lot of the girls wouldn't even really try the rope. He said, but I watched you, and even though it was a challenge for you, you came back at it every single class and tried over and over and over again. And you ended up making it the furthest of any of the girls in the class, which surprised me because I hadn't paid attention to that. I just noticed that some of the kids had made it up really easily, and I didn't pay attention to what the group was or what the demographics were. And he said, and that surprised me because you were not the one right at the gate that was really strong at it. And he said, but your persistence and your consistency enabled you to make it much further. So again, I wasn't really impressed with that because, in my mind, the fact that I hadn't made it to the top was a failure. But I learned a lot from that. And when that unit came back around again, I made it to the top. And I took what I'd learned the first go around. I watched what some of the boys did. I learned from the techniques, and I made it to the top of that damn rope. Rang the bell. I remember it was second grade by the time I did it, but it was one of those just amazing moments where I had worked so hard to get there, and it felt amazing. And I remember when he used those words, persistence and consistency, with me, I had to go home and look them up. And when I looked them up, I didn't really know what they, I didn't really think anything of them because they didn't really, for a first grader, they didn't have much context. But what I've learned in life is that those are the superhero powers. With persistence and consistency, you can accomplish pretty much anything, because success is never a direct path. It is never a start at point A, go to point B, and you're there. And it's also not smoothly paved. Success is a circuitous route. It's got ups, it's got downs, it's got rough patches. And the only way to make certain that you get from point A to point B is you've got to be persistent as hell. You've got to be laser focused. You got to put your head down and be like, no, I'm going to get there. People will tell you can't do it. You've got to be focused on it and do it anyway. Consistency is the key, because you've got to do whatever the action is to get there over and over again, even if you don't see results. And one of the analogies that I realized long ago that kind of helps me keep that in mind is if you've ever done a hand crank for a well, and the first couple of times that you crank that handle, nothing happens. And you keep cranking it, and before long, your arm is tired, and you're getting bored, and you're still not seeing anything. And that's the point at which it's easy to quit. That's the point at which a lot of people will step away and be like, you know what? This one must be dry. There's nothing there. But if you quit at that point, then you're never going to get water. You've got to keep going on that blind faith that this action is going to get me where I want to be, even if I don't see immediate results. And that's where that consistency, whether it's in business, whether it's in working out, whether it's in relationships, whatever it is, pick the thing that you want and then remain consistent in your efforts towards that goal. Because eventually what's going to happen is, as you're cranking that handle, eventually you're going to get that first gurgle of water. And then the more you crank it, you're going to get this huge rush of water that's going to come out of nowhere. But you never would have gotten it if you hadn't started cranking the handle and staying consistent with it, even when you didn't seem to be getting any results from your actions. So I've learned a ton from that coach's or that gym teacher's words so long ago, and I hope you did too. Because persistence and consistency are the superhero powers that can get you anything that you want in life if you're willing to stay persistent and stay consistent with whatever it is you're doing to accomplish them.